Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. Even homeless people have more worth than you. My brother laughed as he ate the food I bought. Everyone laughed with him. I didn't argue, I just left. Month later, he regretted it. I never thought my brother's true colors would show themselves over a simple act of kindness. But here we are. This happened last Friday, and I'm still processing everything that went down. Some context. I've always been the black sheep of the family, mainly because I chose to build my own path instead of joining the family business. My brother Noah took over from our father, and he never lets anyone forget it. The thing is, I've done pretty well for myself, well enough that I'm usually the one paying when we go out as a family. Friday was meant to be a celebration. Noah had been bragging about some big deal he'd closed, so I offered to treat everyone to dinner at this upscale place downtown. My mother, Cora, was there, along with Noah, his wife, Isabella, and their daughter, Hazel. Hazel's 8 and probably the only genuine person in our family besides me. The evening started normally enough. Noah dominated the conversation with his usual self-importance, while Isabella nodded along like he was sharing the secrets of the universe. I've learned to tune it out over the years, focusing instead on Hazel's stories about school and her latest art project. It was when our food arrived that things took a turn. Through the restaurant's window, I noticed an elderly man sitting on the bench outside. He had a small cart with what looked like everything he owned, and he was trying to stay warm in the evening chill. I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where I can help others, so I quietly asked our server to add another meal to our order, their soup of the day and a sandwich, and have it packed to go. Noah noticed the exchange. Playing savior again, little brother? He smirked. I ignored him and continued my conversation with Hazel about her science project. But Noah couldn't let it go. You know, he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, it's funny how you're always trying to prove you're better than everyone else with these charitable acts. Is it because you're trying to forget when we were kids and Dad had to bail out your failed ventures? I kept my focus on Hazel, but she had gone quiet, watching the adults with that perceptive look kids get when they know something's wrong. Isabella was already giggling, anticipating whatever Noah would say next. The server returned with the packed meal, and I excused myself to step outside. As I approached the elderly man to offer him the food, I could hear Noah's voice carrying through the restaurant's open window. Even homeless people have more worth than you. He laughed. At least they're honest about who they are. You're just pretending you're not the same failure you've always been. The elderly man had just thanked me when the sound of laughter erupted from our table. My mother's nervous titter, Isabella's shrill cackle, and Noah's booming laugh created a chorus that felt like it was drilling into my skull. Only Hazel remained silent, her face pressed against the window, eyes wide with concern. I walked back inside, sat down, and finished my meal in silence. Noah continued his performance, throwing in jabs about my charity cases and how I was trying to buy a personality. Each comment got its expected laughs. I watched Hazel push her food around her plate, her earlier enthusiasm completely deflated. When the check came, I pulled out my card without a word. Noah was in the middle of another story about his business acumen when I stood up. Thanks for dinner, Isabella chirped, not even looking up from her phone. I looked at each of them, my mother avoiding eye contact, Noah and Isabella lost in their own world, and Hazel who suddenly jumped up to give me a hug. I held her tight for a moment, then set my card on the table. The bill's paid. I need to go. That's all I said before walking out. Through the window, I could see Noah rolling his eyes, probably launching into another commentary about my dramatic exits. What they don't know is that I spent the weekend making some calls and checking into things I've been ignoring for too long. I've supported the family business more than they realize, and maybe it's time to take a closer look at exactly what my brother's been doing with all that responsibility he's so proud of. The elderly man was still there when I left. He'd saved half his sandwich, carefully wrapping it in the paper napkin. For later, he said with a dignity that Noah could never understand. I handed him my business card, told him to come by my office if he needed anything. Noah thinks worth is measured by how much you can take from others. He's about to learn how wrong he is. Update 1. First, thank you all for the supportive comments on my last post. A lot has happened, and I need to share what I've discovered. It's worse than I initially thought. These past 2 weeks have been interesting. My phone has been lighting up with messages from family members, each more desperate than the last. I haven't responded to any of them, except for Hazel's text about her art projects. She shouldn't have to suffer for the adults' drama. The really interesting part started last Tuesday when I received an email from Eliza, my father's old friend who handles some paperwork for the family business. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk." What followed was a 2-hour video call that left me feeling cold. Turns out my brother Noah's big deals weren't exactly what he'd been claiming. Eliza had noticed discrepancies in the accounts. Small at first, but growing increasingly obvious. She tried bringing it up with my mother, but Cora just brushed it off with her usual "Noah knows what he's doing" attitude. I spent the next few days quietly digging through records Eliza sent over. The pattern was clear. Noah had been systematically siphoning money from the company for years, not just small amounts either. We're talking about millions in consulting fees to shell companies that all seem to lead back to personal accounts. The irony? Some of those accounts were funded by my own investments in the family business. Every time Noah needed a capital injection for his supposed expansion plans, guess who he came to? And I had always helped believing I was supporting our father's legacy. Yesterday, Isabella called not to apologize, mind you, but to ask if I'd be attending the board meeting next week. Her voice had that fake sweetness she uses when she wants something. I let it go to voicemail, but her message was revealing. "Noah says it's just a formality, but he really needs you there to sign some papers. Family has to stick together. Right? Right. Family." What she doesn't know is that I've already spoken to the board members. Turns out Noah's been feeding them different versions of the company's status for months. Each version carefully crafted to hide his mismanagement. But numbers don't lie, and these numbers tell a story of systematic theft and fraud. The most disturbing discovery came from checking the timestamps on certain transactions. Remember that elderly man outside the restaurant? The same day I bought him dinner, Noah had transferred a substantial sum to an offshore account, a sum that matched exactly what was needed to cover payroll for our father's longest-serving employees. He's been playing with people's livelihoods while mocking others for showing basic human decency. Cora sent a text this morning. "Please, Benjamin, whatever you're doing, think about your brother's family. Think about Hazel. I am thinking about Hazel. I'm thinking about how her father has been stealing her future while teaching her that cruelty is acceptable. As long as you're laughing while doing it. The board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Noah doesn't know that I've already submitted a complete audit report. He doesn't know that Eliza has been documenting everything for months. He doesn't know that his perfect world of privilege and mockery is about to crumble." My phone just buzzed again. A text from Noah. "Hey, little brother, we need you at the office tomorrow. Time to step up and be part of the family business finally." What do you say? What do I say? Nothing yet. But I've prepared 3 folders of documents. One for the board, one for the authorities, and one for our mother, who'll finally have to face what her golden child has become. Some of you asked in the comments of my last post why I didn't stand up to Noah at the restaurant. Truth is, I've been standing up to him my entire life, just not in the way he could see. Tomorrow he'll understand exactly what kind of person he's been mocking all these years. The elderly man from the restaurant, he came to my office last week. Turns out he used to work for my father years ago. The stories he shared about Noah's early days in the company filled in the last few pieces of the puzzle. I've arranged for a car to pick up Hazel from school tomorrow and take her to her favorite art class. She shouldn't have to witness what's coming. Sometimes protecting family means protecting them from other family member. The meeting is at 9 a.m. I'll update you all tomorrow on how it goes, but one thing's certain, Noah's about to learn that karma doesn't always take the high road. Update 2. The board meeting just ended. I'm sitting in my car trying to process everything that happened in the last 4 hours. Some of you asked for an immediate update, so here it is. I arrived early at 8:30 a.m. The conference room was empty except for Eliza, who was setting up the projector. She gave me a slight nod. Everything was ready. I placed my 3 folders on the table and waited. Noah strutted in at 8:55, Isabella trailing behind him like always. He actually smiled when he saw me. That same smug grin from the restaurant. Finally decided to join the family business, little brother. I didn't answer, just watched as the board members filed in, followed by our mother. Cora looked nervous, her eyes darting between Noah and me. She knew something was wrong, but not what. Noah started the meeting with his usual flourish, talking about growth projections and future expansions. I let him go on for exactly 15 minutes, let him dig that hole deeper. Then I opened the first folder. Before we discuss expansion plans, I said, sliding copies to each board member, we should review these transactions from the past 3 years. Noah's face didn't change, but his left eye twitched. A tell he's had since childhood. Isabella reached for her phone, probably to start damage control. I had already ensured the room signal was blocked. "What's this about, Benjamin?" one board member asked, flipping through the pages. "It's about accountability," I replied, then turned to Noah. "Would you like to explain the consulting fees to Maxwell Holdings, or should I?" The color drained from his face. Maxwell Holdings was his first shell company, named after his college roommate. Sloppy. "This is ridiculous," Isabella cut in. "Noah has grown this company tenfold. You're just jealous because what?" I interrupted. "Because I chose my own path? While your husband was stealing from employee pension funds?" That got everyone's attention. Cora tried to speak, but I was already opening the second folder. 3 years of systematic theft, I continued. Shell companies, fake consultancy fees, inflated contracts, but the pension fund Noah, that's what made this criminal. "You don't understand," Noah started, his voice shaking. "The market was volatile. I needed to cover some temporary shortfalls." "Temporary?" I pulled out the bank statements. "Is that why you bought the yacht last month? To cover shortfalls?" Isabella's perfect composure cracked. "What yacht?" Turns out Noah hadn't told his wife about his little purchases, the vacation house in the Bahamas, the offshore accounts, the gambling debts. The next 2 hours were a blur of accusations, denials, and revelations. Noah tried every trick deflection, emotional manipulation, even attempting to pin some transactions on Eliza. But I had documentation for everything, every transfer, every fake contract, every lie. I did what I had to do. He finally snapped. Dad would have understood. He knew business isn't about playing nice. That's when Cora finally found her voice. "Your father," she said quietly, "fired his own brother for taking a single unauthorized commission. He would be ashamed." Noah laughed then, that same cruel laugh from the restaurant. Ashamed, he'd be ashamed of him. He pointed at me, the disappointment who abandoned the family business to play humanitarian. At least I stayed. At least I tried to keep his legacy alive. "By stealing from it?" I asked, opening the third folder, the one with the police reports. The room went silent. Noah's face turned an interesting shade of gray. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "Remember what you said about homeless people having more worth than me?" I stood up. At least they're honest about who they are. The board voted to remove Noah immediately. As majority shareholder, something he never bothered to verify, I had already prepared the necessary paperwork. Isabella left halfway through the voting, her perfect mask completely shattered. Cora stayed until the end, silent tears running down her face. When it was over, she touched my arm. "Benjamin, I said. "Just make sure Hazel is okay." As I was leaving, Noah tried one last time. "You can't do this to me. I'm your brother." I turned back. "Number what you are is a thief who happened to be born to the same parents as me, and now you're unemployed. I hear the restaurant down the street is hiring. Try not to mock their charitable customers. The police are reviewing the evidence now. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss restructuring, and I just received a text from Isabella's lawyer." But the most important message came from Hazel's art teacher. She had the best time in class today, won first prize for her painting. The subject? A man sharing his sandwich. Sometimes karma works in mysterious ways, and sometimes it works exactly as it should. I'll update once more after everything's settled. Right now I need to meet with the pension fund trustees. Unlike some people, I believe in paying my debts. Finally, update. It's been a month since my last update, and I promised to share how everything concluded. Revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold. Mine came with a side of absolute devastation. Let's start with Noah. Remember how he always bragged about his business acumen? Well, the authorities didn't find it quite so impressive. They raided his house last week, Turns out my evidence was just the tip of the iceberg. They found records of money laundering going back 5 years. The best part, he'd kept meticulous notes of everything, probably thinking he was too smart to get caught. Isabella filed for divorce 2 days after the board meeting. Not out of moral outrage, mind you, but because I made sure she learned about Noah's girlfriend in the Bahamas, the one he bought a house for using company money, the same house Isabella thought was an investment property. Her lawyer contacted me for evidence to use in the divorce proceedings. I provided everything, free of charge. The look on Noah's face when he realized his wife's lawyer knew every detail of his financial crimes, priceless, but I wasn't done. Remember that elderly man from the restaurant? He wasn't just any former employee. He was my father's original partner, the one who helped start the company. Noah had forced him into early retirement years ago using fabricated performance reviews. I've reinstated his pension with back pay and given him a seat on the board. His first act, voting to approve a complete audit of every decision Noah made in the last decade. The pension fund scandal hit the local news. Noah's face was on the front page being escorted out of his house. His friends in high society? They vanished. Amazing how quickly people distance themselves when the facade crumbles. Cora tried to play peacemaker, begging me to drop the charges. "He's still your brother," she pleaded. I showed her the surveillance footage of Noah mocking elderly employees as he cut their retirement benefits. She stopped defending him after that. The company? I've taken control, but not in the way Noah always wanted me to. I've restructured it into an employee-owned corporation. Every long-term employee now has equity. The look on their faces when they learned they'd be shareholders, not just workers. That's what real business leadership looks like. Isabella's social circle has crumbled. Turns out people don't want to associate with someone who knew about pension theft and stayed quiet. Her country club membership was revoked last week. Apparently they have standards. Who knew? Noah tried to contact me through his lawyer, offering to make things right if I dropped the charges. I forwarded the message to the prosecutors as evidence of attempted witness tampering. He's facing 15 years now, not 5, but the real karma that came yesterday. Noah had hidden money in crypto accounts, thinking he was clever. What he didn't know was that I'd been tracking those accounts since day one. When he tried to access them from his parents' house, where he's been staying since the divorce, he found them empty. Every cent transferred to a trust fund for Hazel. Speaking of Hazel, she's living with Isabella's sister now. I've arranged for her to attend the best art school in the city. The trust fund will cover her education through college. Noah can't touch a penny of it. His daughter will have opportunities he can't control or steal. The elderly man who sparked all this, he's thriving. I've set up a foundation in his name to help retired employees. The first recipient, Noah's former secretary, who he fired for asking too many questions about the accounting. Yesterday, I received a letter from Noah's prison. He wrote that he finally understands what true worth means. I had it framed and hung it in the boardroom right next to the new company mission statement. Integrity is not negotiable. Some of you asked if I feel bad about destroying my brother's life. I don't. He had years to choose integrity over greed, kindness over cruelty. He chose wrong every time. I visited that restaurant again last night, sat at the same table, but this time I wasn't there with family. I was there with the elderly man, now board member, and we discussed plans for the company's new charitable foundation. As we left, I saw someone who looked like Noah's former golf buddy, bussing tables. Karma does take its time, but when it arrives, it brings receipts. This will be my final update. The company is thriving, Hazel is flourishing in her new school, and Noah, well, orange is apparently his new signature color. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just watching someone fall, it's making sure they have a clear view of everything they lost as they hit bottom.